When a motorcycle club gets a 24-hour eviction notice, everyone assumes it's about unpaid rent. But the truth is far darker. A president drowning in gambling debts, a city collector with illegal secrets, and a 13-year-old boy who knows exactly how to stop it all. This is the story of loyalty, betrayal, and the kid who refused to stay silent. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, wedged between the iron gate and the faded welcome mat that nobody had bothered replacing in years. Marcus Corman Coleman spotted it first when he rolled up on his Harley, still nursing his third coffee of the day. The official stamp caught his eye immediately, the kind that never brought good news. He tore it open right there in the parking lot, squinting against the early sun. His jaw tightened as he read the words. Read them again. The letters didn't rearrange themselves into better news. Property seized. Vacate within 24 hours. Inside the clubhouse, the morning meeting dissolved into chaos within minutes. Corman slammed the notice on the scarred wooden table where the Iron Meridian had gathered for 15 years, and voices erupted from every direction. The room exploded into accusations. The landlord, the city, some outside crew trying to muscle in. Nobody wanted to consider the simpler explanation. This is a mistake. It has to be. When's the last time we paid rent? Where's Gordon? Where the hell is our president? Gordon Reynolds sat in the corner booth, his face the color of old concrete. He'd known this moment was coming for weeks, watching it approach like a slow-motion collision he couldn't prevent. His hands trembled against the coffee mug. He studied the table's old cigarette burns like they held answers. Gordon, Corman's voice cut through the noise. You want to explain this? The noise died. Someone's boot scraped against the floor. Everyone watched Gordon. Gordon stood slowly, his leather vest hanging looser than it had 6 months ago. He'd lost weight, stopped shaving regularly. The signs had been there, but everyone had been too busy with their own lives to notice. I gambled it, he said quietly. The rent money, last month's. The month before that. I kept thinking I'd win it back, that I'd fix it before anyone knew. You what? The question came from Daniel Cage, one of the younger members, his face flushed with anger. You gambled our home? How much? Asked Julian Sullivan, the club's oldest member. His voice was steady, careful. How much are we talking about? Gordon's throat worked. 18,000. Give or take. A chair hit the wall. Boots hammered toward the exit. Across the street, Norman Hughes sat on his front porch, watching the scene unfold through the clubhouse windows. He was supposed to be getting ready for school, but his backpack sat forgotten beside him. The bikers were his personal barometer for how the day would go. When they were calm, the neighborhood felt safe. When they were upset, something was wrong. And they'd never looked this upset before. Norman remembered the day 3 years ago when Tyler Brennan and his friends cornered him behind the school gym, taking turns shoving him against the brick wall. He remembered the fear, the helplessness, the certainty that nobody was coming to help. Then Corman had shown up. His daughter went to the same school, and everything changed. One look at the leather vest, the Iron Meridian patch, and Tyler's crew scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Corman had asked Norman if he was all right, bought him a soda, and told him, anyone gives you trouble, you let us know. They'd protected him because that's what they did. No questions, no conditions. Now they needed protection, and Norman was the only person who knew the truth. Back inside the clubhouse, Grace Reynolds pushed through the door like a storm front. 5 years since she'd walked out telling him she wouldn't watch him drown himself in whiskey and poker chips. But word traveled fast in a small town, and she'd heard about the eviction notice within an hour. Dad! Her voice stopped Gordon mid-sentence. He turned, and his expression collapsed. Gracie, I didn't think. You never do. She moved past him, scanning the room. Everyone needs to calm down. Fighting each other won't solve this. Your father stole from us? Cage shot back. He lied to us for months. I know what he did. Grace's eyes were hard. But tearing each other apart gives whoever sent that notice exactly what they want. Has anyone asked why this eviction is moving so fast? 24 hours? That's not standard procedure. Nobody answered immediately. Corman frowned, pulling out his phone to photograph the notice. She's right. Something feels off. Outside, Norman made his decision. His Uncle Vincent had delivered that notice himself. Norman had seen him yesterday, bragging to their mother about finally clearing out that biker trash. Vincent never cared about anything unless there was money involved, which meant this wasn't just about unpaid rent. Norman grabbed his backpack and headed for the clubhouse, his pulse loud in his ears. He could hear his mother. "Stay away from your uncle's business. You hear me? Stay away." But staying away meant watching the only people who'd ever stood up for him lose everything. And Norman Hughes was done staying away. Norman caught Grace by the door as members filed out to smoke and argue in smaller groups. His voice came out thin. "Miss Reynolds? I need to talk to you. About the eviction." Grace turned, recognizing the kid from across the street. She'd seen him around over the years, always hovering near the clubhouse like a satellite in orbit. "Norman, right? This isn't really a good time. My Uncle Vincent delivered that notice." The words rushed out. "He works for the city as a collector. He came to our house yesterday and told my mom he was handling the biker problem. He said it like he was proud." Grace's eyes narrowed. She glanced back into the clubhouse where her father sat alone at the table, head in his hands. "Come with me." They walked to the back office, a cramped room reeking of motor oil and mildewed files. Grace knelt down. "Tell me everything." Norman twisted his backpack straps. "Uncle Vincent scares me. He's always talking about people who owe money, people who need to be removed. Last month he showed me this thick folder he keeps locked in his desk drawer. He said it was insurance, proof of all the collections he's done. He laughed about how nobody could touch him because he knew where all the bodies were buried." "Did he say anything specific about the club?" "Just that this one was personal. That he'd been waiting for the right moment." Norman's voice dropped to a whisper. "Miss Reynolds, 24 hours isn't normal for an eviction. My uncle brags about bending rules, but this feels different. Like he wants you gone before anyone can ask questions." Grace thought fast. Her father was a mess, drowning in guilt and shame, but Vincent Hughes pushing this hard suggested something bigger was in play. "Norman, I need you to do something brave. Can you find out what's really in that folder?" Norman went pale. "He told me if I ever touched his things, I'd disappear." He wasn't joking. "I know. And I wouldn't ask if there was another way." Grace placed a hand on his shoulder. "But you came here because you know these men need help. Let me talk to some people first. Don't do anything yet." 20 miles outside town, Gordon sat in a rusted lawn chair outside his brother's trailer. Carl Reynolds was dying. Lung cancer, stage 4. And Gordon had avoided visiting for months, too ashamed to face the one person who'd always seen through his lies. 18,000. Carl's laugh turned into a cough. "Gordon, you never were good with money. But this is spectacular even for you." "I know." Gordon stared at his boots. "I keep thinking about Dad, about how he built that club from nothing. And I pissed it all away." Carl lit a cigarette despite the oxygen tank beside him, because dying men stopped caring about consequences. "Vincent Hughes is behind your eviction." Gordon looked up sharply. "How do you know that name?" "Because Vincent's been sniffing around properties in that area for 6 months. He works for developers, finds legal ways to clear land fast." Carl inhaled slowly. "There's a development deal coming. Big money. That whole block by the railroad is getting torn down for condos or office space or whatever rich people need now. Vincent gets a cut for every property he clears ahead of schedule. So my gambling just made it easier." "Your gambling gave him the excuse he needed." Carl's eyes stayed clear. "But Gordon, listen to me. The debt is real, but it's not the whole story. Somebody inside your club has been feeding Vincent information. How else would he know exactly when to strike?" Gordon felt gut-punched. "That's impossible. These guys are my brothers. Or maybe one of them saw an opportunity. You've got less than 24 hours. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and start asking who benefits if the club falls apart." Back at the clubhouse, the division deepened. Cage and 3 younger members wanted to barricade the doors, force the city to drag them out physically. Julian and the older veterans argued for legal options, lawyers buying time. Clay Switchblade Peters sat quietly at the bar, nursing a beer and watching everyone argue. He was 52, had been with Iron Meridian since the beginning, and his opinion carried weight. When he finally spoke, the room quieted. We're broke. Gordon admits it. The notice is legal. Fighting this physically just gets us arrested. Clay's voice was measured, reasonable. Maybe it's time to accept that this chapter is over. We can rebuild somewhere else. Rebuild. Corman slammed his palm on the bar. Clay, we've been here 15 years. This place is our home. Home is the people, not the building. Clay held his gaze. I'm just saying we should be realistic. Grace entered during the exchange, Norman trailing behind her. She'd been making calls, and her expression was grim. I talked to a real estate attorney. Clay's right about one thing, the eviction notice is technically legal. But the timeline is suspicious. I also made some calls about Vincent Hughes. The room turned toward her. Vincent has a reputation. Properties he targets tend to get cleared fast and sold to development companies within weeks. He's been investigated twice but never charged. Grace looked around the room. This isn't about $18,000 in back rent. This is about land acquisition. Someone wants this property, and Vincent is the hammer they're using to get it. Cage frowned. So what do? We find proof, Grace said. Vincent keeps records of his deals. If we can prove this eviction is part of a corrupt land grab, we can stop it. Everyone stared at Norman. He swallowed hard. The kid across the street, Corman said slowly. Vincent Hughes. That's your uncle, isn't it? Norman nodded, unable to speak. And you know where he keeps his records. Another nod. Grace stepped between them. He's 13 years old. We're not asking him to. I'll do it, Norman said, surprising himself with how steady he sounded. I'll get the files. The plan was straightforward. Norman felt sick anyway. Vincent kept office hours until 6, then headed to McCready's bar for exactly 2 hours before going home. That window was their only chance. Grace drove Norman to the municipal building, parking 2 blocks away. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. Norman's hands shook. He opened the door. There is no other way. You said it yourself, you've got maybe 12 hours left. The building's night janitor was Olivia Rios, and Norman knew her because she cleaned his school. Grace had called in a favor, and Olivia left the side entrance propped open with a doorstop, pretending not to notice when 2 figures slipped inside. Vincent's office was on the 3rd floor, a cramped space smelling of burnt coffee and stale cigarettes. Norman's hands fumbled with the picks. Grace hadn't explained where she got them. The drawer lock was old. It gave way faster than Norman expected. Inside, the ledger was exactly where Vincent always kept it. A thick black binder, pages crammed with addresses and payment notes. Norman's fingers trembled as he pulled it out, flipping through pages of Vincent's cramped handwriting. The Iron Meridian's address appeared halfway through, but the notes made Norman's gut clench. Accelerated timeline approved. Development partner confirmed. GP cooperation secured. Final clearing set for Wednesday. GP cooperation, Norman whispered. What does that mean? Grace leaned over his shoulder, photographing pages with her phone. I don't know, but we need everything. Keep looking. Norman turned more pages, finding other addresses, other properties Vincent had cleared. The pattern was obvious: low-income areas, struggling businesses, all quickly evicted and sold within weeks. But one entry stopped him cold. It was dated 3 months ago. A payment record for $5,000, marked simply, Switchblade, Advance Installment. Grace. Norman barely got the words out. Look at this. Grace went white. She knew exactly who Switchblade was. Before either could speak, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not the janitor's soft shuffle. The office door swung open. Clay Peters stood in the doorway, and his expression wasn't surprised. Just tired, like he'd known this was coming. You shouldn't have come here, Grace. Norman couldn't process it. Clay wasn't supposed to know about this, to be here. Grace positioned herself between Clay and Norman. How long have you been working with Vincent? Clay closed the door behind him, leaning against it, and studied them both. This woman he'd known since she was 10 years old, and the kid who'd always watched the club with such obvious longing. 6 months. since I found out about the development deal. Clay sounded worn down. Vincent approached me, said the club was going down anyway, that Gordon's gambling would sink us eventually. He offered me a way out with money in my pocket instead of empty hands. So you sabotaged us. Grace's voice shook. You made everything worse. Gordon did that himself. I just helped things along. The accounting books, the missed payments, making sure Vincent knew exactly when to strike. Clay rubbed his eyes. You think I'm proud of this? I've been riding with these men for 20 years. But the writing's been on the wall since Gordon started betting away our future. Norman found his voice. The note said GP cooperation. That's Gordon, isn't it? You made him think things were worse than they were. Smart kid. Clay smiled without humor. Gordon lost money, yeah. Maybe 9,000 over 6 months. But I adjusted the books, created fake vendor invoices, made him believe he'd buried us under 18,000 in debt. Desperate men don't ask questions. They just spiral. Grace's hands balled up. And when the club falls apart, you disappear with Vincent's payout. How much is he paying you to betray your brothers? 50,000 when the deal closes. Enough to start over somewhere nobody knows my name. Clay pushed off the door. Now give me the ledger. I can't let you walk out of here with it. Why not just take it? Grace challenged. You've got 60 pounds on me and the kid's 13. Because I'm not that far gone. Clay's voice wavered. I sold out the club, but I won't put my hands on you. Just give me the binder and walk away. Tell Gordon you tried. He'll drink himself unconscious and forget about it by morning anyway. Norman scanned the office. The ledger in his hands represented everything. Proof of Vincent's corruption. Evidence of Clay's betrayal. The club's only chance to survive. His mind raced through options, all ending the same way. Clay wins, they lose. Then he saw it. The old fire alarm mounted beside Vincent's filing cabinet. The kind with a pull handle that still existed in buildings too cheap to modernize. Norman moved before thinking. His hand yanked the alarm down and the alarm screamed through the building. Clay jerked toward him instinctively, and Grace lunged for the window, throwing it open. The fire escape was right there, rusty but solid. "Gio!" she screamed at Norman. Clay grabbed for the ledger, but Norman was already moving, clutching it to his chest as he scrambled through the window. Grace followed, and they were both on the fire escape when Clay reached the window. They locked eyes. Clay could follow them, catch them on the stairs, could take the ledger back by force. Instead, he turned back into the office. Through the window, Norman saw him open Vincent's safe, grabbing bundled cash Vincent had stashed for emergencies. Clay chose the money over the evidence. He was running. Norman and Grace hit the street at full speed, the alarm wailing in the distance. They didn't stop until they reached Grace's car, both gasping, the ledger clutched between them. "We got it," Norman panted. "We actually got it." Grace's hands shook, starting the engine. "Now we need to get it to someone who matters. Before Vincent realizes it's gone." They had maybe 3 hours before the deadline. 3 hours to save the Iron Meridian from enemies outside and betrayal within. Norman gripped the ledger. It had to be enough. Grace drove straight to the police station, the ledger heavy on Norman's lap. Nearly 10 at night. Less than 9 hours remained. The desk sergeant looked skeptical until Grace opened the binder and started pointing out entries. Vincent Hughes has been running an illegal property seizure operation for at least 2 years. Accelerated evictions, falsified urgency claims, kickbacks from developers. It's all documented in his own handwriting. The sergeant called his lieutenant. The lieutenant called the city attorney. Within an hour, Vincent was in custody. Before midnight, a judge issued an emergency stay on the eviction pending investigation. By midnight, the Iron Meridian Motorcycle Club still had a home. Norman stood in the clubhouse parking lot as members arrived, summoned by urgent calls. Grace had asked him to be there when she told them everything. He owed them that much. Gordon arrived last, looking 10 years older. The fluorescent lights washed everyone out, made them look sick. Grace stood at the front of the room, the ledger open on the table. "Clay Peters has been working with Vincent Hughes for 6 months," she started. "He sabotaged the club's finances, falsified accounting records, and fed information to Vincent to coordinate the eviction. The room exploded. Everyone spoke at once. That's impossible. Clay would never. Where is he? Grace held up a hand. He ran, took Vincent's emergency cash and disappeared tonight. The police have a warrant out for him now. Corman looked shaken. How bad was the sabotage? Bad enough that Gordon believed he'd lost $18,000 when the real gambling losses were closer to $9,000. Grace looked at her father, who sat frozen. Dad did gamble club money. That's real. But Clay made everything worse. Created fake debts. Manipulated the books to make the situation look hopeless. Julian chose his words carefully. So Gordon's addiction hurt us. But Clay was the one who pushed us over the edge. Yes. Grace closed the ledger. Vincent needed a reason to move fast on the eviction. Gordon's problems gave him that reason, and Clay made sure it looked catastrophic enough that nobody would question the timeline. Gordon's voice came out rough. I still lost that money. I still lied to all of you for months. Clay being worse doesn't make me innocent. No, Corman agreed. It doesn't. But it means we're not dead yet. Grace continued. The eviction is suspended. The city attorney is investigating Vincent's entire operation. We'll probably be questioned, but the clubhouse is safe. Norman watched from the doorway. The news settled slowly. Some looked relieved. Others sat in stunned silence, unsure what to feel now that the enemy turned out to be one of their own. Cage turned toward Norman, and his expression softened. You did this. You got the ledger. Every head turned. Norman felt his face burn under their attention. The kid risked his life breaking into a city building, Grace said firmly. His uncle threatened him, his family depends on Vincent financially, and he did it anyway, because you all protected him once, and he wanted to return the favor. Gordon crossed to Norman. The boy tensed, unsure what to expect. Gordon dropped to one knee, meeting Norman's height. You saved us. Not just the building. You saved the club from tearing itself apart. Gordon's voice cracked. I don't deserve it, but thank you. Norman's eyes stung. You helped me when nobody else would. I couldn't just watch you lose everything. Julian spoke up. We need a vote. The bylaws are clear. Anyone who betrays the club is out. Clay's done. But Gordon. He looked at the president. You lied. You gambled away club money. Some of us think you should step down. I agree, Gordon said immediately. I'll resign tonight. Wait. Corman stood. Let's be clear about what we're voting on. Gordon screwed up. Bad. But he's owned it, and he's the one who built this club in the first place. Clay's betrayal was calculated. Cold. Gordon's was human. Weak, but human. They argued for half an hour. Some wanted Gordon out immediately. Others argued for giving him a chance at redemption through treatment. In the end, the vote passed narrowly. Gordon could stay as president if he entered addiction counseling within a week and submitted to financial oversight. Gordon accepted the terms without hesitation. Then Cage spoke up again. One more vote. Norman Hughes. I move we make him an honorary member of Iron Meridian. Youngest brother we've ever had. The vote was unanimous. Tears pricked Norman's eyes as Corman placed a hand on his shoulder. You're one of us now, kid. That means something. 6 weeks later, barbecue smoke drifted across the packed parking lot. Grace had organized a fundraiser to cover the club's legitimate remaining debts, the money Gordon actually had lost. The community turned out in force, curious about the bikers who'd made headlines when Vincent Hughes's corruption scandal broke wide open. Gordon manned the grill 3 weeks sober. He looked lighter. The weight he'd carried seemed gone. Grace worked the cash box, and Norman helped serve plates, wearing an Iron Meridian t-shirt that hung too large on his thin frame. By evening, they'd raised enough to clear the debts completely. As the sun dropped low, Norman sat on the clubhouse steps between Corman and Julian. The parking lot buzzed with conversation and laughter. Gordon caught Grace's eye and smiled, the first genuine one she'd seen from him in years. You good, kid? Corman asked Norman. Norman thought about Vincent, who'd fled and was facing federal charges. About Clay, still missing but with warrants in 3 states. About his mother, who'd cried when she learned what Norman had done but held him tight and told him she was proud. About sitting here with people who'd chosen him, and who he'd chosen back. "Yeah," Norman said. "I'm good." Julian raised his beer can in a toast. To the kid who wouldn't stay quiet. Around them, the club echoed the sentiment. Norman ducked his head, grinning despite himself. The Iron Meridian had survived. Scarred, yeah. Smaller, but still here. And Norman Hughes had helped them get there. A 13-year-old kid stood up to a dangerous man and exposed a conspiracy that almost destroyed the only family he'd ever known. Would you have risked everything for loyalty? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Embrace the Journey for more stories that remind us why courage matters. See you in our next video.